Welcome to Beyond Leadership Principles. This isn't your standard leadership series. It's a collaborative space where safety and HR unite to explode what leadership really means in today's workplaces, which is beyond titles, beyond policies, and far beyond theory.
Thanks, Faith. I love that we're going to explode into what leadership really means. But in each episode, we'll actually unpack the real-world tension between high-level leadership ideals and the day-to-day responsibilities of keeping people safe, engaged, and compliant.
Certainly, I love that. So we combine in two critical disciplines, safety and HR, to offer a holistic strategic approach to leading teams. Why? Because culture, performance, well-being, and legal compliance don't operate in silo, and neither should leadership.
Thanks, Faith. As your hosts, Faith Eason and Nicole Catterson, we bring deep practical expertise backed by qualifications in psychology, law, human resources, systems thinking, injury management, training, and auditing. This isn't just insightful content, it's designed to shift the way you lead.
This series will challenge the way you think about leadership. It's not about tips and tricks. It's about understanding leadership as both a human and legal responsibility, and learning how to lead in a way that builds trust, drives compliance, and lifts performance.
Absolutely. So if you're ready to lead with clarity, courage, and integrity, stick with us. You're in the right place. So Nicole Catterson, NLC Advisory, so refers to Nicole Louise Catterson, or otherwise known as Next Level Cultures. Business was established to support other business, with a solution that taps into the principles of putting people first. So 3 streams across people, culture, and behaviours, both within and across an organisation. So in offering HR support and coaching to businesses that don't have internal functions, to providing mental health and wellbeing workshops and support in workplaces, we offer a customized solution to businesses, both businesses and leaders themselves.
So thank you. Yes, I'm Faith Eason. My business is Focal Safety Management. I'm a safety enhancement specialist. So how I got into safety is where I saw, in the workplace where injured workers were basically would come and basically tell me how they were injured, and I could see preventative strategies could have been put in place to prevent that. I also saw how it impacted not only on the worker, but the workplace in terms of finances, in terms of, resources, and as well as employees. So for me, this is where I saw a niche. I also was dealing with subpoenas where a lot of workers, because of permanent impairment, they would get payouts. And yes, although that payout was good, but their lives were actually, it impacted on their lives, their livelihoods. Their marriages even broke up. And this is where I thought I could be able to help workplaces and ensure that injuries are reduced.
So Faith, the first episode that we wanted to go through was essentially the leader's role in workplace safety and HR. So first of all, I guess what does a leader define workplace culture? Essentially, like what is workplace culture? Where do we start? So a workplace culture essentially provides a degree of continuity and order. It's a shared understanding of what's socially acceptable across behaviours, reactions, how we treat each other, and essentially it's what the organisation is. It's essentially how we do things around here. Employees can act with a level of consistency within the environment to which they belong. We like to think about a shared vision. So what kind of culture do you want to create? We need to build trust. What actions need to be consistent with our values? So what does the organization value? What do you value? And how do we be consistent against that? Other areas that we look at are things understanding the performance, understanding and ensuring that the performance then validates the mission and the vision of the company. Success is essentially defined relative to a follower's expectations and their assessment of that situation. So I ask people to think, how achievable are your goals? Is there a stretch? Does it meet the mission and vision? Will it be a repeatable behavior that then repeats that performance? It's important to have a use of cultural forms. So what are visible expressions and your means of communicating? Are there stories to be told? Are there myths in your organization? What symbols do you use? For example, do you have award nights? What does your logo look like? Is it consistent with your mission and your vision? Administrative actions. So we need a consistent administration structure. So what do I mean by this? So how is your business structured to meet the vision and mission today? Is your organizational structure set up that will not create silos, that will make sure that there's consistent communication, that safety is taken into consideration across each pillar? The use of tradition. Are there traditions in your organization that through stories that continue on over multiple years? One example I do like to use is across the rugby union sphere. The rugby union space have got multiple traditions that have edged in time, and it continues by the values that rugby brings and the cultural continuity within that space. I will also say that traditions can be detrimental in culture too, to a culture. So it's being mindful of what traditions you continue and carry on throughout time.
So when we talk about traditions, like traditions in the workplace, what would you think about? What would you consider a tradition in the workplace?
So a tradition in the workplace might be what type of onboarding and how you welcome someone into your business. Whether that might be, we take them for a coffee, or we might bring them in and it's about taking them out for dinner that evening, or there might be something that you can bring to life, and equally through on the work sites, for example, there might be traditions through, as I said, through an award. So there might be a monthly Employee of the Month award, or something that continues throughout the course of someone's employment through that employee life cycle.
So basically, you'd say like the induction process. How would that look? Is that what you're saying? The
Absolutely.
induction and perhaps also maybe when you in that workplace, would you because obviously if the person is a new recruit comes into that workplace, it would be a strange place for them. They need to know where various whether from the amenities or what the process is, or when do they have their lunch times, etc. So perhaps maybe giving them a buddy up with someone.
That's right.
To be able to sort of get them familiar what's what the systems and the processes are there in that workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And from day one, you're starting to build a perception of what that culture is at that organization from day one. I guess that comes down to as well what the attributes of that employee, that new starter are too. That individual needs to be willing, and they need to look at the leaders and even their buddy's personal qualities, because the buddy doesn't necessarily need to be a leader either. They might display some of the attributes of a leader that sees them take that person under their wing and look at how effective they are in dealing with that particular induction, and how effective they are in welcoming that person into the fold.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the leader plays a really big role in the whole process. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so a leader's behaviors, I guess, are impertinent. Like, they are pertinent to how how welcoming and how accepting, and that particular, like, I guess, that day one. Not only just for, well, I mean, we're talking about the leader across the whole employee life cycle. So from the leader themselves need to build trust, be effective in terms of how they role model the goals, communicate their expectations. They need to build an impression on their own competence, I guess. And yes, they need to show some level of credibility in terms of their technical skills, but it's just as important to have that genuine behavior that people look up to. They need to be able to show and uphold, I guess, also the corporate image. So whether we're talking about the culture of the organization or the safety culture vision, all of that needs to connect to the broader vision and corporate image of the organization. Leaders also control resources. So they're in a position to be able to assess the existing systems and processes and bring those in and understand what's going to create the efficiencies, the productivity that we need to see, but at the same time establish the culture that they need to instill. So yeah, through their own behaviors. So yeah, they can approve different resources, but at the same time, they still need to have that culture shaped.
Yeah, because I mean, from the safety perspective, we always say that leaders, have the power to make decisions, and they have the
Correct.
powers to influence, which is really puts the onus all back on them as leaders to ensure that they're actually managing that workplace effectively, and
Yeah,
also they're meeting their obligations, from the safety perspective, work health and safety, as well as, they have to ensure compliance as well.
that's
So
right.
even in terms of fair work, they also need to be able to be compliant, ensure that they are meeting their due diligence, and their duty of care.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and you said, Faith, they're the decision makers. So they need to be able to have that duty of care, but equally they need to make some pretty tough decisions from time to time, and they've got that, I guess, that in their capacity. We talked a little bit. I mean, there's a lot around well, psychological safety, and it's it's in their remit to be able to create that psychological ease for and that safe space for the employees to build that genuine culture and trust, because a lot of it is based on trust. They need to build what's called a dialogue culture. They need to communicate, and it's not just on safety issues, but all of the issues in terms of it's a level of transparency to build that trust.
Yeah, communication, as you say, is really essential. Effective communication is really essential
Yeah.
in that role as well. And that will really help in the process of ensuring that, as you say, even from a psychosocial perspective.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, also, you're talking about resources, resources are also part of what is important so that the staff can do, or the employees can do their work activity effectively.
Correct.
So getting the right resources, getting the right instruction, getting the right general support would really be quite a big part of having employees that are, you know, uh, um, have job satisfaction, feel
Yeah,
motivated, so they have that good morale in that workplace.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess the perception of the workforce and the perception of those senior leaders um, relative to the safety and well-being of the workforce forms the basis for how that worker or how those workers will in turn behave when it comes to safety, when it comes to managing their own staff, or yeah, what comes with leading a team.
Yeah, and as you said, it's leading from the top, and
Mm.
they need that commitment, from the senior
Yeah.
management from the top, and that passed down, to them. So
And I guess it's not a matter of, I guess we can't assume as well. So I guess sometimes an assumption might be made that it cascades down, but without an overt, you need to make an effort and have your strategies in place to make sure that the message is being cascaded down from that senior leadership space. You need to have measures to assess that the message is being heard at all levels,
yeah,
which I guess comes into the accountability space too.
exactly.
Who's accountable for what? Who's responsible for what? Why does it matter? We talk about accountability being the ownership of outcomes. So someone being you're answerable for the results of that task, the decision or the behavior. Someone's accountable for ensuring safety standards are met. And that can come at any level, and those senior leaders need to make sure that that message is where there is accountability that's been identified, that is happening.
At the start of your presentation, you spoke on two other points. Can you go back to those, please?
Oh, at the
I
start,
thought, yeah, I think
yeah.
there's two other things you mentioned there that I thought were quite important.
Shared vision, build trust,
Mm.
develop capability.
As you said,
Um,
shared vision. I think
mm,
that's so important. The vision is so important. I think vision gives a bit of direction to
absolutely. Yeah.
workers. Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing what kind of culture you want to create and bring everyone along, for one of a better term, bring people along for the journey. How do you want to create that, and what kind of strategies do you put in place to build that, which then links into the whole piece around building trust. And we mentioned before around actions being consistent with your values and your vision.
Mm.
And I think just recognizing too, so for people that are contributing to successes, make sure that they're recognized. Um, make sure you're communicating to how improvements can help and benefit teams in the long run. Yeah.
I was just trying to look also at there's one or two other points I was just working on earlier. So I just want to have a look and see what were those.
Yeah.
So we've covered, why leadership defines workplace culture,
Yeah.
and then fostering leadership accountability. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that one?
So from accountability point of view,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's a matter of setting clear expectations. So you're accountable for various goals, strategies across the business. Need to make sure that the expectations are clear. Make sure that you're leading by example, model behaviors that you would want others to follow. Own outcomes, whether they're good or they're bad. We talked about recognition. Self-reflection, I think, is a big one. So
Yes.
just make sure you regularly check in on yourself and reflecting on your own actions and behaviors so that you can make sure that you yourself are aligning with your vision and values. Hold others accountable. Leadership's a collective activity. Everyone's without, again, to coin the phrase, we're all in this together. You need
Can I
to,
just interject?
yeah.
I love the self-reflection.
Yeah.
Because often self-reflection goes back to when you're looking at how the employees are responding to you and
Yeah.
how they reacted to you. That actually tells you in a way what's happening. So a lot of what I've seen, like through my time in my particular career, I've seen that sometimes when you get a leader, and maybe the leader's not very doesn't have the good leadership qualities, you find that workers retract. They
Yeah.
don't come forward when they
Correct.
see that you're not, like if they come forward and they perhaps trying to communicate with you in a certain way, they're trying to probably yes, trying to in a way to, they're interested in the workplace. They come to you, they might, oh, I report this is happening, or I've got this idea, or whatever it might be. And they look at that reaction from you and
That's right.
your response to that. And that determines whether they're going to come back to you and maybe report whatever they need to report, or whether they're going to come back to you and say, look, I've experienced this. Maybe this is a best practice we can use in the workplace. So I think it stops them, depending, as I said, that self-reflection is so important, because by what response you get from the workers will tell you whether or not your leadership is whether you're a true leader or whether you're just a manager. Because they say there's a difference between a manager and there's a difference between a leader. A leader
Absolutely.
is quite different. There's two different ways. So yeah, I think that self-reflection is really good. And it's just looking back to say, how are the staff responding to me? Are they coming back to me? Are they communicating to me whether there's an issue, an incident, or whether there's something positive that's out there, or even, helping with processes, or how they're responding. One of the things that one of my clients reported said that they've just, because their workplace was a bit toxic and there's been a lot of changes, but now this leaders, this new person that's in place here, I can see now they're coming forward. They're telling me, like when we're in the meeting, they're responsive. They come up with new ideas. They seem really motivated. She says there was an incident where they had to look after a certain situation, And so she says just the way they came together as a team
Right.
to manage that. And she says, and that is like indicated to her the cultural change from when this new CEO came in and
Okay.
said, I can see now, because when I walked in, you know, as that new person managing that workplace, they were very withdrawn. But as soon as they realized over time that my leadership was quite different to the previous one, gradually they've, changed, and now they're more responsive. They're coming
Yeah.
forth with all these ideas, best practices. And as I said, when I've actually witnessed a situation, how they came together as a team to actually
Yeah.
manage that. So, that's why I think that self-reflection is such a big thing.
So she's had a fair, bit of a reflection on herself and what's happened in the over the course of the last 12 months. It sounds like to get her to a point where the culture has shifted by the sounds of that.
Yes, she
Mm,
says definitely, because she
great.
says they were just so withdrawn when she
Mm,
started and weren't participating in meetings, and now to see they gradually, when I think they realized, well, this is a different form of leadership,
mm,
and over time they realized, well, it's not like the old people, the old, the previous
yeah.
um, managers or CEOs, what they were. It's a really different, and this person is definitely been fair. She's going
Mm,
according to, the workplace policies and
yeah.
procedures.
And built trust.
That, yes, that's
Mm,
their trust.
mm,
And when that trust is lost, it's hard to get it back.
mm-hmm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
you can't blame employees, because obviously the having lost the trust, they must have experienced some significant negative behavior
Mm,
that has impacted on them. So yeah, but
yeah.
it's a long road to get them back
It
again.
is to get that back. And I guess it comes back to as well that creating that just culture where um, it's that no blame and admitting that mistakes, having that systems, it's not always, it's not the human's fault. It's not, it's let's have a look at what systems and processes we have in place that can ultimately, that might need fixing. Um, it might not be, it sounds like she's created such a culture that it's a lot safer and more productive.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes,
yeah,
certainly. And I
yeah,
like how you're saying about the systems. There's that no blame. It's,
mm,
and most times when you look back, it's about the system,
yeah,
what system
yeah,
is in place.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and look on the self-reflection, it's about building that emotional intelligence, and looking inwards and outwards, and building that safe space. And look, there's tools, there's formal tools that you could use to um, really go down a path and look at how your employees are um, reacting to different things and what they see and how they see you as a leader too. So there's some, that really help you build on your own self-reflection to work out, well, how do they like to be led? What do they, what drives them? What motivates them? Um, Put yourself in their shoes, and build that emotional intelligence essentially.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're looking at, so that's really powerful, really, when you think of it, really powerful. So what then if we're looking at what is the link between culture, the leadership, and performance?
Yeah. Look, leaders set the tone, and that's what we've been talking about the last few minutes. Leaders set the tone. They create that element of psychological safety and trust. And when you set the tone and culture's driving performance. A positive culture actually increases the engagement and the motivation and shapes and guides behavior. So it's not a vicious cycle, but it's a good cycle to be in, where you're building that engagement and people are being rewarded and developed, and what gets rewarded gets repeated. It becomes like, this is what works here, I guess. This is what works here, so we'll do it this way. And building that element of trust when you do make a mistake, as we mentioned, when that there's a learning from it, that people develop from that. People do, you can do annual exercises to audit your culture and look at ways to improve that. When leaders have access to resources, they can, as we said before, they can authorize and direct change where needed. A high performance culture, though, needs or high performance as such, needs to have a culture that encourages interpretation, improvisation, so unique action. So you need trust, openness, a mutual understanding, I guess, from both the worker and the manager, or both the worker and the leader, so that they're working together for the common goal, for clarity, direction, and the task at hand.
So what I'm hearing you really saying is, in a workplace, leaders should really empower the worker.
Yeah, yeah.
And in empowering the worker, they're going to get the outcomes they require, because there's going to be that more collaboration, more teamwork spirit, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. Look, they're more motivated, they're more productive. You create that, I guess, create that little bit of a challenge to build and grow, grow your team. Let them feel, give them some involvement in decisions. Value their learning, give them some accountability, responsibility, and work with them. Set clear goals. Make sure that that priorities are communicated effectively, and that's what a good culture would look like, and building that leadership capability as well. Genuinely connect with people, essentially, and the results will come.
Yeah. So, could you give me, like, in from your perspective, a summary of the leadership role in the workplace? What summary would you give me with that?
So a leader to me is someone that I look up to, someone that's fair, they're transparent, they allow you to have ownership of tasks, they're inclusive, and they just build that environment of trust around them, and someone that you want to, that you aspire to, I guess. Yeah, that's what I see as a leader. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. They
Mm.
inspire, they guide,
Mm.
and they motivate, so that, like, and build that team
Yeah. Yeah, that's
team
right.
yeah team sort of spirit, that you work together. And so that in that way I suppose that builds success, and towards, I suppose, compliance, and
Yeah.
it helps with performance, I think, in terms of productivity
Yeah,
within that
absolutely.
workplace. So
And there's a lot of research around being part of the group and being in within the group that you're leading. So there's research for it, there's research against it. So it's that element of um, knowing what your group, or knowing what your team is about, and the values that they espouse to, and working with them to drive the culture and the behaviours that you would expect. but at the same time, being able to provide them with that aspiration and someone that they look up to. And in a lot of cases too, I mean, a leader doesn't, in the nature of a hierarchy, the leader doesn't have to be the most senior person. People take on leadership competencies, and they take on that leadership persona in a lot of cases. And it's identifying that and aspiring to that.
Yes, I've actually heard about, like how you're saying, sometimes it's not even the leaders. Sometimes you find a group of workers who work in a specific sector or a department, but within that group, they nominate their own leader or somebody that will help the
Yeah,
group, so
absolutely. Yeah.
they don't really have to have, in terms of the workplace, have that leadership, badge, but in that group, they actually then become the leader. So,
Yep.
so that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds like a very interesting. This our first episode, and it's
Yeah. Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
interesting, having that discussion. And yeah, we look forward to
Yep.
our viewers coming in and giving their comments, and wherever we can, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those, and probably that will help us with content,
Yes.
if there's any
Absolutely.
issues you faced in the workplace, between Nicole and I, will have a look at them and just see perhaps how we can respond to those, or be able to do a bit of research to help you.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
Great.
thank you all. Thank you, Nicole. This has been a great session. Oh, I'm trying to close.